All right, welcome back to the No Huddle Podcast College Football Edition. It's been a minute, had some finals, couldn't get an episode up last week, but we are back, ready to talk conference championship week, playoff reactions, playoff previews, and everything in between, because there's been surprisingly a lot that's been going on. So the first thing that we're going to get into is the conference championship games, of course. I know it's been some time, but we haven't covered that. And similar enough to rivalry week, which I said was one of the less eventful rivalry weeks that we'd had in recent years, I would say the same for conference championship week. We only had two close games, really, and one of which wasn't super eventful. It was the ACC. Yes, it did matter because that means JMU gets in over Virginia, but I don't think many people were tuning in late at night to watch Duke and UVA when you could have been watching Ohio State and Indiana. But that being said, we saw a blowout win for Texas Tech. They went down early. They went down 7-3, but they stormed right back. Massive defensive performance for them. They cruise right in and rightfully take the 4 seed. But Friday night, we saw Tulane take down North Texas. Tulane played very well. Some of the worst officiating you've ever seen. At the end of the first half, you saw the missed kick-catch interference that ended up leading to a Tulane touchdown. They got the ball at the 10-yard line off a muffed punt. It went off a different player while there was kick-catch interference in the background. Refs totally missed that. 7-point swing, could have been even more if you want to say that North Texas would have scored a touchdown. So terrible call there that helped Tulane win. But that being said, we also saw the SEC championship. It was supposed to be a close game. I thought it was going to be a close game. Didn't really expect this much of a blowout. Georgia beats Alabama 28-7. We saw Alabama put up -3 or -3 rushing yards. That's kind of shocking. In many ways, I mean, that offense is totally stagnant now. They couldn't really run the ball the entire year, but now that they can't just move forward at all, they went down 21-0 and Ty Simpson led a decent drive, but Georgia bounced right back. So Alabama is on a huge fraud watch. They don't look good at all, and they're going to face a tough test against a very strong defense in Norman this weekend. And then the Big Ten Championship was a great game. Wasn't very high scoring, a lot of defensive action. We saw both quarterbacks throw picks early on in the game, and then we saw a huge missed field goal from 30 yards out for the Ohio State kicker. They ended up losing the game 13-10. Mendoza with a great interview at the end. We flippin' did it. I mean, that was pretty awesome. He ends up getting the Heisman, which in my opinion was deserved. I think that it's a statement win for Indiana. Without a doubt, they are the team to beat. I don't think they'll win the national championship, but they look like a horse coming out of the Big Ten. Signetti, back-to-back coach of the years. I mean, not much more you can say besides the fact he came in, said, "Google me, I win," and he put his money where his mouth is. Just a phenomenal turnaround. Shows you what NIL can do. I think that's the beauty of seeing these teams have resurrections. Teams like Vanderbilt, Indiana that were nowhere near competitive, and all of a sudden they're ascending to the top of the college football world. When you even out the playing field, it's not just the top dogs in the SEC who can pay players. Everybody starts to become really good. So that's really it for conference championship week. There's not really much to delve into with the games. None of them were particularly exciting or piqued much interest. But then the day after, we saw the college football playoff official rankings, official bracket. And I said on that Friday that I didn't really see a spot in for Notre Dame, and I was kind of surprised with the rankings. I do think they got it right in the end by putting Miami in, and I've advocated for Miami throughout the past 5-6 weeks. I mean, I've been a big proponent of Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame in the rankings. However, I do think that Notre Dame fans have a right to be angry with the playoff committee, not really with Miami or Alabama, because they were misled. Because the criteria is a bit shaky. They never should have been jumped by Alabama in the first place. So that didn't quite sit right with me. They never should have been jumped after the Iron Bowl. But then Alabama is the only team in the college football playoff era to lose a conference championship and not drop at all. And people are saying, I could hear out the argument saying that you can't be punished for losing a conference championship. I mean, they earned the right to play the extra game. But then you think about it, and that argument is kind of shoddy because that doesn't really align with any of the precedents that have been set in previous years, because conference championships have taken teams out of the college football playoff. I think it was 2017 or 2018 when Auburn was number 2 in the country, and they enter the SEC championship, get blasted by Georgia 28-7, and then they drop from 2-7 out of the 14 playoff. In 2023 or 2022, we saw Georgia as the number 1 team, undefeated, lose to Alabama in the conference championship and drop from 1 to 6. So on those 2 occasions alone, we've seen teams fall out of the playoff spots because they lost a conference championship. And honestly, I think Alabama deserved to do the same. I think Miami deserved their spot, but you can't put up -3 rushing yards and A, expect to not move, and B, to be in the playoff. They're not one of the 10, well, we'll say 10 because there are 2 spots that don't go to the best 12 teams, but they're not one of the 10 best teams in the country. And I think Notre Dame deserved that spot. And it's a bit iffy on how you go about it. They shouldn't have been jumped. In my opinion, Miami should be 9, Notre Dame should be 10. But Miami deserved the spot, and Notre Dame can be upset for being misled, but I don't really know how you deal with it. The one thing I will say is get rid of the rankings before. I agree with the people that have been calling for just a 1 ranking show for the college football playoffs. I think that's totally right because Notre Dame did get the short end of the stick on this one. They were ranked 8, 9, fluctuates back and forth, and all of a sudden they drop 2 spots in the last 2 weeks without playing in one and beating another team by 30 in the other. So that doesn't really add up, in my opinion. But the one thing I will say is Notre Dame handled this so poorly, and it's laughable for what Marcus Freeman and his team are doing by opting out of this bowl game. It sets a horrible precedent, and for so many reasons. Like, I'll give you 3 reasons right now. 1, you haven't won a national championship since the Reagan administration. Who the hell do you think you are? You're not Georgia. You're not Alabama. You're not Clemson. Like, you don't have that national championship pedigree anymore. You're not like that. 2, your seniors earned this bowl game. They earned the right to play in a game one last time for a historic program that has a huge fan base, and they deserve the right to play in one more game for the team. And 3, it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Like, why would you not want to play in that? Like, you're not above the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Nobody is. And also, like, bowl games, people say that bowl games don't have meaning anymore. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I was at the Pop-Tarts Bowl last year watching Miami play, and we watched Emory Williams take over for Cam Ward at halftime and completely shit the bed. And all of the Miami fans, including Mario Cristobal, realized very quickly, we need a quarterback ASAP. And that's why they have Carson Beck. And Carson Beck is part of the reason they're in the playoffs right now. But he's the part of the reason they lost 2 games, but he's also a big part of the reason why they won 10. So bowl games do have meaning. I know the example doesn't exactly hold over because Notre Dame does have a freshman quarterback, but like, the game should be played. And it sets a horrible precedent saying if we don't get what we want, we quit. Quit like a champion today. That's the Notre Dame mentality. And it's really unfortunate to see how it goes. I get other teams opting out because they had 6-6 seasons and they have coaching changes like Iowa State. I understand that. But Notre Dame, it's really just not a good precedent at all. I don't really understand it, and I can't get behind it in any way. It's a really, really poor decision, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, that is their decision, and whatever precedent it sets, that's what's going to happen, but they did what they did. The last thing that I want to discuss with the college football playoffs and the situations around it is I want to get into my 5 favorite plays that altered the landscape of the college football playoffs weeks before we knew what was going to happen. So the first one is going to be was Wake Forest SMU. Connor Calvert hits a game-winning 50-yard field goal as time expires to beat SMU. If that doesn't happen, SMU and UVA play in the conference championship. The ACC gets an automatic bid. James Madison would be out, and we see an additional team that's more qualified. Number 2, C.J. Daniels with the incredible one-handed catch against Notre Dame. If he doesn't make that, Miami has to settle for a field goal and eventually loses the game by 1 in this situation. Notre Dame would make the playoffs at the expense of Miami, and it would be a whole different landscape. Number 3, Ryan Wingo takes the opening play 75 yards to the house against Vanderbilt. If that doesn't happen and they don't score on the drive, Vanderbilt wins the game, goes 11-1, and takes a playoff spot probably away from Miami. And we'd see Vanderbilt in the playoffs, which would be unbelievable. Number 4, Oklahoma blocks a 35-yard field goal against Alabama. That doesn't happen. Alabama wins the game by 1. Oklahoma picks up a third loss and gets eliminated from the playoffs. Notre Dame finally gets in. And number 5, Marcel Reed to Nate Borkircher against Notre Dame. The last play of the game virtually. 11-yard touchdown on 4th and goal from the 11 to beat Notre Dame 41-40. Notre Dame, if that didn't happen, Notre Dame wins the game, goes 11-1, and probably makes the playoffs.